All right, welcome everyone to the code walkthrough of the program. So in these 20 sessions, I think, I'm going to show you how to build an end-to-end machine learning system from scratch, from the very, very beginning. And in this particular session, the first session here, I'm gonna help you set up your local environment and your AWS account, okay? So at the end of this video, you should have everything you need to start running the code of the program. So I'm going to start here really quick. I'm going to open the setup instructions that you have access to, and I'm gonna go line by line, configuring everything on this computer. Before we do anything else, I just want you to make sure that you are running the Python 3.10 version. The code is not gonna work with Python 3.9 or Python 3.8, okay? So you need to be running 3.10. I have not tested the code with 3.11 or 3.12. I'm not sure if it's gonna run with those versions. It is going to run with 3.10. That being said, let's go to the instructions, and the first thing that you need to do is fork the repo with containing all of the code for all of these sessions. That's the, number one here. You're gonna go to that repo. This is the repository. I'm not gonna fork it because I have write access on the repo, obviously, but you please fork it, give it a name, and that is the repo that you are gonna clone on your local computer. So I'm gonna go here, grab the URL of the repo. Okay, remember, you're gonna do this with the forked repo that you are gonna create. I'm gonna go back to my terminal and I'm gonna git clone that URL. Okay, so I'm gonna download that repo to my computer. This is gonna take a second. After that's done, I'm gonna go inside. I'm gonna list everything here, and this is what I get. That's all of the code and everything that I need to run my repo. And your files might look a little bit different, but that's okay. All of the code is gonna be here. All right, so let's go to the second step, and the second step is to just create and activate a virtual environment. So for those of you who are not Python developers, one thing that you don't want to do is to install libraries directly on your computer, because anytime you upgrade a library, it's gonna be a mess. Applications that are using a previous version are going to break, so you don't want to do that. Instead, what you do is you create a virtual environment and you install all of the libraries for this program inside that virtual environment. And if another program requires a different library, it's not gonna mess up where your library is here. So there are multiple ways in Python to do this. You can use Poetry, you can use Conda. I'm an old school guy. I'm gonna use the venv module from Python 3. It comes already with Python, so I don't have to install anything new. That's what I'm gonna use here, but you can use anything that you want. So I'm gonna execute this first line. So that first line, it's basically calling the venv module. That's what the -m is for. And then it's creating my virtual environment in a local folder that's gonna be called .venv. And the dot here in Linux and Mac computers is so that directory is hidden, okay? So if I execute this, it's gonna take a second, and I'm gonna list everything, and now you can see there is a new directory called .venv, okay? And again, that directory is gonna, if I just remove the A from the listing, you're gonna see that that directory doesn't show up because it's hidden, okay? So awesome. So now what we need to do is activate that, and that is the second line. So I'm gonna execute that line, and now notice here in the command prompt in my terminal that I have parentheses .venv close parentheses. That indicates that I'm inside that virtual environment. So any libraries that are installed right now are gonna be installed within my virtual environment, not on my computer. Okay, so this is awesome. Let me remove everything here. Now I'm ready to start installing my libraries. One note here for anyone that's not running Linux or Mac. I'm on a Mac here. The commands are gonna be pretty similar in Linux. Some of these commands are going to be different if you're running on a Windows computer. You're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to Google what the commands are. Like, for example, activating the environment. I think you have to execute like an exe file within the environment, something like that. So I'm not sure. I'm not a Windows user. You're going to have to look those up, but they should be pretty similar. So we're through this. Next step is to install all of the libraries. So I'm going to go back to my command line and notice that inside there is a requirements.txt file. And that file, I'm just listing out here what's inside the file, contains all of the libraries that we need to install in order to run the code, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is upgrade the PIP, which is the package installer for Python, and then install all of those libraries within the requirements.txt file. There are two commands for that. The first one is this one here, which is going to upgrade the PIP, the package installer. So I'm gonna run that. What happened here? Sorry, just made a mistake. I should have used Python 3, and then I'm going to install all of the libraries. Let me grab this second command, and this is going to install all of the libraries. Now, this is gonna take a second. It's collecting and downloading and installing all of my libraries. While this works, I'm gonna get started on this setting up Comet section here. Again, we're almost through with the first section. Let's go and set up Comet. Comet is a platform that we are going to use to track experiments. To all of the experiments that we run within our system, we're gonna track them with Comet. It's free, so you can create a free account. I already have an account, but you can go, basically you can go to Comet here. Actually, let me go back so I can open that in a different tab. I'm gonna open Comet. I'm gonna sign up here with my GitHub account. And as you can see, I already have a project. Again, when you come here, you can create a new account, it's free. You're gonna create a project inside. So the first step is just create a free account. Then you're gonna create a project. Then you need to grab your Comet API key, and you can grab that Comet API key from here. I think it's somewhere here, account settings, API keys. So you go there and you can grab your API key. That is the key that we're gonna use to connect to Comet and track all of the experiments. After doing that, you are going to create a .env file within the project directory. So let's go back to the terminal window. This already finished, which is great. I'm going to create a .env file, and this .environment file will contain all of my environment variables that we're gonna be using from the notebook of the program. So I'm gonna go inside .env file, and I'm going to paste, sorry, not this. Let me grab this. Okay, so I'm going to paste these two lines, and these two lines here will contain the API key that you're gonna grab from the website and the project name that you're gonna grab from the website. In my case, if I go to Comet, why did I close it? Let me go back to Comet here. This will be my project name. This ML School will be my project name. So I can go here and I can type ML School. That will be my project name. And here I will have to type my API key. All right, so after doing that, let's see what's next. Let's go back here. This will be done. Now it's time to configure let me go back because we missed this number 4. And this is about installing Docker. You need to have Docker installed on your computer if you don't have it already. I'm linking here a website, and that site will, allow you to install Docker for your operating system, will give you instructions or whatnot. Pretty much when you're done with it, just make sure it's working by just typing docker.ps, and you should see something like this. If you don't have Docker installed, this command obviously is going to fail. You need to make sure you have Docker installed. Let's go back and let's start configuring AWS. First step is to create an AWS account if you don't have one. When you create an AWS account, you are going to do that with an account that's called the root user. So you need to be logged in with the root user of your account to continue doing this. Once you're inside, you're going to go to the IAM service. And this is where you're going to configure the users. What you're going to do right now is create a new user. Now, this is why, right? You don't want to access, you could, but you don't want to access your AWS account using your root user, because your root user has a lot of privilege, right? Like it can access billing, it can access your credit card. So you don't want to do that. Instead, create a separate user, and that's going to be the user that you're going to use throughout this program to access the SageMaker account. So I already have a user here. Obviously, it's the one that I've been using, but I'm going to create a new one just so you see what the process looks like. I'm going to go to the users tab here. I'm going to create a new user, and I'm going to call that user Santiago. Okay. I'm going to click here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to click provide user access to AWS Management Console. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to create an IAM user because I'm going to be, I'm going to be accessing the console programmatically as well. An auto-generated password. That's fine. Let me say user must create a new password and next signing. No, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, you do want to do this when you're doing like a real user, real account. I'm not going to use that. I just want to create something quickly. I'm going to click next. And now, after I do this, I'm going to attach policies directly. Now, I have a user group that's called administrators that I created here. You don't need to do that. You're going to go here to attach policies directly, and you are going to attach administrator access to that user. This is the simple way. I'm making that user an admin. Admin does not give that user access to billing information, so that's great, but it gives that user access to all of the other services that I need. If you're working on a company and you want to, like a little bit more restrictions here, feel free to do that. I'm just making it simple here. I'm going to attach this policy and I'm going to get this done. So I'm going to click next now. This is awesome. Let me see what else. User details. Password is going to be auto-generated. It's going to have admin access. I'm going to click on create user. This is the console password. This is the password that I'm just going to save somewhere. I'm just going to type it here in the browser just so I don't lose it. And I'm going to return to the user list. Okay, awesome. So now I have my user. My new user is called Santiago. Okay, so let me go back to the instructions. So I already did this. Now I'm going to install the AWS CLI on my computer and I'm going to configure it. Now you can install the AWS CLI by going to that link, following the instructions. That's what we're going to do right now. And then you're going to configure it. Let's click on this install the AWS CLI and find your operating system. I'm going to go to macOS and I'm going to do command line installer. And here it is. This is what I need to do. Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna go outside this folder and I'm going to paste this, the first command. And this command is just gonna download the package to install the CLI. Cool, that's awesome. That was really quick. And now I just need to install the CLI. This is pretty straightforward to do. After doing this, we should have access to the AWS CLI. Is installing it. Cool, awesome. So let's give it a try. Let's type AWS. Boom, that works. That's awesome. The next step is to configure the CLI. Configure it with your username. With the access key and secret key that you need. So how do we do this? All right, so if we go back to the setup instructions, let's create an access key for this user. Okay, so I'm gonna go here to the AWS console. I'm gonna go inside my user and I'm gonna go inside security credentials. Okay, inside security credentials, you're gonna see access keys. And here I'm gonna create a new access key. Okay, I'm gonna just click in the first one. It's a confirmation message. And then I'm gonna create a description. And I'm going to say, okay, so this was machine learning school. This description is just so later you understand why you created that access key. How is it being used, that access key? I'm going to create it. And now I have an access key and a secret access key. Okay. And I'm going to configure my AWS CLI now using this access key and this secret access key. Okay. That is what is going to allow me to connect to my AWS account. All right, so going back here, you're going to see that I have on option number 3 or step number 3, I have a configure page that's going to tell you how to configure the AWS account. It's very simple. This is how you do it. You type AWS configure, okay? And now it's going to ask me for my access key. And I'm going to go and grab my access key. Here is my access key. And now it's going to ask me for my secret key, okay? So I'm going to click show, copy that, and paste it here. And obviously, by the time you guys are watching this video, this user is not going to exist anymore. That's why I'm showing my access and my secret key. You want to keep those secret, obviously. So the default region name, I am on, if I go here, you're going to notice that I am, I thought it was here. Let me see. I'm on US East 1. That's my region. I'm going to type here, okay? Default output format, I don't care. That's it. How do I know this is working? That's it. AWS should be configured on my computer. How do I know this is working? Well, I'm going to try to create a bucket, okay? And here is, we need to create an S3 bucket on our accounts. So all of the code, all of the resources and assets that we generate in the program are going to go inside that bucket. So we're going to create a bucket. You need to give it a unique name. I already have a bucket here. I'm going to create a new one just so you see it. I'm going to call it sample ML school bucket. Just going to call it like this, but you can call it however you want. Okay, this is just a name for you. It should be unique. And if everything is working, this command should create my bucket. Okay, so it did work. Look at this, AWS S3LS. This is gonna list everything that I have in my S3 account. And you're gonna see that I have a bunch of buckets created, including ML School, including the sample ML School bucket that I just created. This is cool. This is working. AWS is working from my computer. So this is properly configured. And that means that I'm gonna be ready to run my code. Let's see what's next in this configuration. There is a note here for those of you who are not in US Eastern 1 region. You need to specify your region to create your bucket using the location constrained parameter. There is an example command on how to do that. All right, next step is to upload the data to this S3 bucket. The data of the program that we have, which is the Penguins data set that we're gonna see throughout all of the sessions, we're gonna upload it to that bucket. So here is the command, and you have to replace your bucket name, obviously, with that command, with the name of your bucket. So let me do this. Let me type the command here. It's going to be S3. The name of the bucket that we just created is sample ML school -bucket. I'm gonna type it there. And then this is the path where I'm going to store that, okay? Penguin/data/data.csv. So I'm gonna run this. This is actually, of course, this didn't work because I need to go inside the program folder. And now I'm gonna run it again. There you go. Now I can do this. AWS S3 API. I'm gonna type something here, whatever. So just it errors out and it gives me all of the commands that are valid, and I can find list objects. Okay, so let's run list objects, and now I can specify a bucket. And what was the name of the bucket again? It was sample ML school bucket. So this is gonna list everything that's inside that bucket. And as you can see, the contents, there we go. Here is the key, penguin/data/data.csv. That worked. Another way for you to see whether or not that worked is just visiting the S3 service from inside the AWS console. So I'm gonna open it here, new tab. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so where is it? There we go. Sample ML school bucket. There is a Penguins folder, there is data folder, and there is the data.csv inside. So that worked. That's awesome. Let's go back to the instructions. After doing this, we need to add a new bucket variable to our environment file. So it should look like this. I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna go back here, open that environment file. There you go. And now I need to paste it. And I pasted it in the middle. You can paste it whatever you want. So let's do this. Oops, sorry. Bucket. And let's put sample ML school bucket. All right. And obviously I haven't put the API key of Comet. I need to do that. Cool. Awesome. So after this, we'll need access to ML M5 X large instances. So this is what happens. In order for us to run all of the processes and the training jobs and the transformation jobs, we're going to be using that instance type, ML M5 X large instances. Unfortunately, by default, most accounts are not going to have access to those instances. We have to request them. The reason AWS makes people request those instances is to prevent people from running those instances, racking up a ton of costs, and then going back and saying, oh, sorry, we didn't know it was going to cost us money. So we need to request access to those instances. This is how you do that. You're going to go to service quotas, AWS services, and then go into Amazon SageMaker. So let's do that. Let's go here and let's find service quotas here in the menu. You're going to click there. Inside service quotas, you're going to go to AWS services, and then you're going to find SageMaker. So from inside SageMaker, you need, let me go back to the instructions here. From inside SageMaker, you need to increase the quota for processing jobs, training jobs, transform jobs, and endpoint usage. Okay, so how do you do that? It's very simple. Where was I? Okay, so let's see processing. Actually, let's do ML M5. I think this is the way you do it. Okay, there we go. ML M5 X large for endpoint usage. I already have 16, the quota, but you're gonna have to request more for you. If you have 0, you're gonna have to have at least 3. You're gonna see processing jobs. I have 16 as well. Just make sure you don't have 0, and you're gonna just basically you select the quota that you want and you click request increase at account level. And this is just give you a form that you have to type, hey, I need to do this because I'm working on the machine learning model and I need that. And that's it. It usually takes about 24 to 48 hours for AWS to get back to you. 9 out of 10 times AWS is gonna approve those, no problem. I've heard some people where AWS requires more information and it doesn't approve those right away. You're gonna have to keep insisting. You're gonna have to give them a little bit more information because AWS is trying to protect people from using those services to just mine crypto or do some sort of scam and then not paying a bill. By the way, throughout this program, we are going to stay within the free tier limit of those instances, so you're not gonna rack any cost. So you're not gonna have to pay anything for using these instances. We're gonna stay within the free tier, which is 50 hours, I think. After doing that, after you do that and you request that, it's time to configure SageMaker. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, you're gonna log out from your account. So you can go to sign out here and you're gonna log back in with the new user that you created. So let me just make this smaller. I'm gonna log back in with my IAM user that I just created. This is my account ID. I'm gonna click next. My username is Santiago and the password I think I typed here. There you go. I'm gonna copy this password. I'm gonna sign in and awesome. I'm inside with a new user. From here, you are going to go to SageMaker. Okay, so you can type here SageMaker, click there, and this is gonna take you through the SageMaker service. Now, I do have a domain here already, but your job now is to create that domain. It's a one-click operation, so it's really, really simple. Let's go back here to the instructions. Notice here it says, so create a SageMaker domain. It will take SageMaker a few minutes to set up the new domain. So if you're craving for a coffee, now is time to do that. Click on set up SageMaker domain. You can do just a quick setup and that's it, just a button, and that's it's just gonna work. You can also do the more step-by-step for if you're an advanced user. I recommend you do the quick setup, click there, and that's it. Now it's going to take a few minutes for SageMaker, about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm not sure. It's gonna take that long for SageMaker to finish this, okay? And you're gonna see that in your list of domains, let me refresh my list here. You're gonna see that there is a new domain called quick setup domain, blah, 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 whatever the name is. And it's gonna show in pending. So that's awesome. I'm gonna continue going through all of these because I already have an active domain. So we don't have to wait for this new domain to work, but it's the same process. After your domain is ready, we need to find out from your domain, we need to find out what the execution role is. So I'm giving you here several steps that you can do through the terminal to do that, to find the execution role. You can also do those through the console. So I'm gonna show you how to do it on the console. If you want to do it from the terminal, I have the commands there. You can go within your domain after it finishes running. There's gonna be a user profile inside. Click on that user profile, and this is your execution role here. The execution role is the role that SageMaker is going to use to run everything that you create, like every SageMaker component that you create, you're gonna attach this role so SageMaker knows what permissions to use for that role. What we need to do is find out this role and change the permissions to that role, because from our pipeline, from our system, we're gonna need to access multiple services. We're gonna need to create Lambda functions. We're gonna need to access S3 to just download the data. So we need to change the permissions of this execution role. So grab this execution role here. Let me go back to the instructions. This is what options 3 and 4 are going to give you. So grab that execution role and you need to add it to the environment file. So let's go back to my terminal. Let's open the environment file. Let's just create a new line here, type role, okay, and then paste the execution role that's attached to your domain. So this is my execution role. I'm gonna save my file now. Awesome. After doing that, I'm gonna have to find the execution role within the IAM service, and I'm going to change the execution policy attached to that role. So this is what that looks like. Go to the IAM service, find the list of roles, and find your role, the execution role that you just created. And this is the one, it's 501. Let me just make sure that's the case. Yes, it's 0501. So 0501, go inside that execution role, go to the permissions tab. You're gonna see there is a policy here. You're gonna see it here. That is called Amazon SageMaker execution policy, and then the ID of that role. You're gonna click on that policy and you're gonna go to the permissions tab. And your permissions, I have a bunch of stuff here because I already added all of those permissions, but yours are just gonna be, I think, one permission or something. You're gonna click on edit, and here, see this JSON thing, you are going to replace with this entire JSON that I have in here. This JSON is the entire specification of all of the permissions that we need, okay? So I crafted those one by one as I was trying to do something, I needed extra permissions, I added those permissions here. So now you can just grab this whole thing and paste it there. So you're gonna grab this JSON and paste it here and replace what you have in here with that JSON, okay? And there should be an option here to click next, and next, and you're gonna save those permissions. That is giving our role permissions to access all of the services that we need. we need to do something else after you change the permissions. I'm going to click cancel because I already have those permissions. So you are going to have to go, let me see where. Let me go back here. It says finally find the trust relationships section under the same execution role. Okay. So we need to go to this, we need to be on the same execution role, which is, this is our execution role. You're going to find trust relationships here. You're going to click there. You're going to edit the trust policy and you're going to paste, let me close this tab. In this trust policy, you're going to edit it and you're going to paste this JSON here. This is doing more of the same. This is allowing my execution role to work with SageMaker and with events. We're going to be using EventBridge, so I need to add this line here. So just make sure you add that. So that is pretty much everything you need to configure your AWS account and your local environment. There is only one more thing if you're running on an Apple Silicon. I am. Like if you go here, if I go here to my computer, you're going to see that this is an Apple M1 Pro. Okay, so if you have an M1, M2, or M3 computer, unfortunately, SageMaker does not provide a Docker image with TensorFlow inside that's going to run on your computer. So we're going to have to create our own Docker image to test our code or some of the pipeline components that we're going to build to test them locally. We're going to have to create our Docker image. I did that already for you. Like if you go here in the code, let me go here. Let's see. You're going to see there is a container folder. And that container folder inside, there is a Docker file that's with the specification to create an image that my notebook is going to automatically use if you're running on an Apple Silicon. And I'm going to show you the code how to do that in a second. But pretty much only if you are running on an Apple Silicon, grab this line here, that this is why you needed Docker in the first place, and run that line from inside the program folder. So I'm going to run this, and this is going to build a Docker container, and it was really quick here because I already had it built. It's going to take a few minutes on your case because it's going to have to download the base image and build the whole Docker container. But this is important because that new image that's called SageMaker TensorFlow Toolkit Local, that is the image that we are going to use from the code. After doing this, everything should be set up. So let's open the notebook. Let me show you around. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of what the Docker, the SageMaker Studio looks like. So you're ready for the first session when we talk about code. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code. That is the IDE that I'm going to use throughout the program, okay? So this is just telling me that there is a different Python interpreter. Okay, so it should be, I'm not going to worry about that right now. So here is, let me show you the extensions that I have. The extensions that are important to run this are obviously the Python extension. I have Copilot and the Jupyter extension. All of the code is inside a notebook. So it's big notebook inside program that is called Cohort, okay? So this notebook here is the one that we're going to be using throughout the program. If you open the outline of that notebook, I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger, close it out. You're going to see, you're going to have every single session. So there is one video for each session, okay? Right now we're in session 1, which is the introduction and initial setup. That's the one that we're going to just cover today. So you get here all of the sessions. So it's organized. You can go directly to whatever you need to do. All right, so what do we need to do here? Let's just run this. I'm opening the notebook. If you have the Jupyter extension, this should work out of the box. I'm going to be running this. Actually, let me see here, the terminal window. Okay, so we're gonna have to go inside. Cool, awesome. So we are inside the container here. Let me execute this. And as soon as I try to execute a cell with code, the Jupyter Notebook is going to tell me, hey, you need a kernel to execute this Jupyter Notebook. So I'm just going to select Python environments. Where do I create this? I should have this. Let me try to select the environment. So for some reason, let me try to do that again. So what version of Python do I have? Actually, Python 3. This should work. Reopening this. Let me go to, it should automatically see the environment. It's not seeing my environment right now. Let me open this. Okay, it sees the environment now. Let's see. Python environment. There we go. Now it sees the environment. I'm going to click here, and this is automatically installing a kernel in my Python environment. So let me close this. There we go. So I can show you all of the code. This is just an introduction. These are, and we're going to talk more about this as soon as we start creating the pipeline. But here you see the diagram, the architectural diagram of the program. And again, we're going to talk more about that as soon as we start looking at the code. But then the code to the initial code that this started with is this cell. So here, what's happening here is that first I'm loading, these are cell magics. So these are line magics here. So I'm loading the .env extension, and this is just to make the .env file available to my notebook. That's what's happening here, okay? So first of all, this is doing an auto reload. So all of the libraries get reloaded anytime you make a change to them, and this is loading the environment in memory. So as soon as I do this, as soon as I load that .env, now I have access to all of the environment variables that I created, that I added to the .env file. So then I'm creating a path called code. It's a folder called code. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm gonna be saving a bunch of temporal scripts that I'm going to create to run my pipeline. I'm going to save them inside that folder. That's what I'm creating this code here. Notice that I'm extending the system path with that folder. So by doing this, now I can reference any one of those files as if it were a library from inside my notebook. That's what I'm doing. It's just messing up with the Python path so I can see the classes and the functions that I'm going to be creating inside those scripts. The file path is penguins.csv. That is where you are going to find all of your data. If I double click on that file, you're going to see that is your data set with all of the data. And in session 2, we're going to spend some time looking into this data set. So I'm just referencing that here. Then I'm configuring IPyTest. IPyTest is a library that's going to be using PyTest to run unit tests. So I included a few unit tests here in this notebook, and I'm configuring IPyTest. So if there is a problem in one unit test, it raises an exception. So it doesn't let the notebook work, right, if there is a problem. That's what I'm doing here. And finally, I'm just configuring the logger for SageMaker. So it's not as verbose as it comes by default, because if I don't do this, it's just going to start spitting out a bunch of nonsense, and I just wanted to make it a little bit more quieter or quiet. So I'm configuring it here so it only displays errors. So that is the first cell. It's pretty simple. This second cell here specifies whether we want to run this notebook in local mode or not. This is the difference. Some of the components of the system that we are going to build, we can run locally. So we can simulate them locally in our computers. That is why we created a Docker image if you were running an Apple Silicon, because that Docker image is going to be running on your computer here, okay? Simulating the process that should happen in the cloud. Some of the components support local mode. Some of the components of the pipeline, as we keep adding to the pipeline and making it more complex, unfortunately, SageMaker will not support local mode. Like, for example, we're going to be using the SageMaker model registry, which is a location, imagine like a database where we store models and we reference the models that we create. That is not supported in local mode, unfortunately. But at least for the first few sessions, we want to enable local mode so we can try it out here in our local computer. It's going to be fast, and we do that before deploying to SageMaker because that's going to take more time. By default, I have it here in true. You're going to see me as I move through the notebook in future sessions. You're going to see me sort of like swapping this with false and then trying it out in the cloud or trying it out locally. So for now, it's just going to be set to true. And then the next line is going to load the environment variables that we created. You're going to see that the bucket is going to come from the environment variable called bucket, the role that we're going to be using throughout the notebook, and then the API key and the project name are also going to come from that environment variable. If this fails, that means that you did something wrong, that you don't have an environment file, that those variables do not exist. So just make sure these cells work. The next cell, because again, the Apple Silicon thingy, I'm basically just creating a variable here that is going to be set to true if I'm running on an ARM64 or Apple Silicon. Apple Silicon is, the architecture is ARM64. I'm going to need that to later pick which image I'm going to use when running locally. Notice something neat about Jupyter Notebooks is that I can combine in a single line, I can combine Python with a bash command. This here, this uname -m, I'm going to execute it here. So I'm going to go to my terminal. I'm going to say uname -m, and that is going to tell me ARM64. That is the architecture of my computer. If you run that command on your Linux computer or in your Windows computer, you're going to get something different. You're going to get AMD, you're going to get Intel x86, whatever the architecture is. Now, in my computer is ARM64, and I'm running that command. That is what the bang symbol is for. It's just running a bash command, and I'm assigning that to a variable that's called architecture, and then this variable is ARM64 architecture. It's going to be either true or false, depending on your architecture. So I'm going to run this, and now I have this value here that I can use it to pick the proper image. Finally, this cell, well, not finally, there is one more cell before we're done with this session. This cell here creates an object, a configuration object, that I later will use to configure all of the steps of the pipeline. I just want to create this config object so it's easier for me to later reference the specific settings. So I don't have to just do the condition all of the time. I just create the object one time and then reference the appropriate setting. So this is what's happening here. First, I'm creating a variable that's called the pipeline session. Now the pipeline session, this is what I need to create. Anytime you create a pipeline component in SageMaker, you need to specify a session, like where is that component going to be running. So here we're going to be using two different sessions. We're going to be using the pipeline session, and the pipeline session is for running components as part of a pipeline. Actually, we're going to be using three different sessions. So the first one is pipeline session, is the one that you see here. The second one is the local session, and you're going to see the local pipeline session here. This is telling SageMaker anything that is using the local pipeline session, run it locally. Do not run it in the cloud. So anytime we're using local mode, we want to be using the local pipeline session object. And the third session is called just the regular SageMaker session. That is different. I'm going to talk about that as soon as we use it for the first time. I think I define a variable down here. Yes, I define this variable here. So anytime you want to run something directly in SageMaker, you will use the SageMaker session. Anytime you're going to use a pipeline, so you want, let's say, a training job, but you don't want the training job to start immediately. Instead, you want the training job to start when the pipeline runs. At that point, you're going to use the pipeline session. So anyway, you're going to see how I use those, and we're going to talk specifically about those as we see them in the code. In this case, I'm creating this pipeline session variable here. Notice that it's pipeline session if we're not running in local mode, okay? If we're running in local mode, this pipeline session is just going to be none because I don't want to run anything in SageMaker. Now, if we enable local mode, the config object is going to contain the session attribute, which is going to be the local pipeline session. Notice as well how I'm specifying the default bucket. Every session has a default bucket. If I don't specify a bucket name, then SageMaker will create a new bucket name with a default name, and it's going to throw a bunch of stuff inside. If you want to keep everything organized, you can specify the default bucket here. So SageMaker throws all of that garbage inside your bucket, so it's easy later to just come and delete your bucket and everything is going to be gone. Instance type. This is the type of computer that I'm going to use to run all of the processes that we need to create. In the case we're running in local mode, I want the instance type to be local. There's no real instance type. If I were running this on SageMaker, so local mode would be false, then I want the ML-M5 XLarge instance. Remember, you had to request access to these instances. The image that I'm going to be using, here is the ternary operator. I'm going to be using the SageMaker TensorFlow Toolkit local image if I'm running on an ARM64 architecture. If not, set this to none. By doing this, I'm telling SageMaker, if you're running in local mode and you're running on an Apple Silicon, please use this special Docker image that I created just for you. If you're running on an AMD, if you're running on an x86, you don't need that Docker image because you are going to be using SageMaker. It's going to allow you to download a Docker image that they already created. So the first time you try to access it, SageMaker is going to download that to your computer. In my case, I don't have a Docker image pre-created for me. That is why I need to specify this. And I don't have it because I'm running on Apple Silicon. Now, in case we're not running in local mode, session is going to be pipeline session, which I already created here. The instance type is going to be the ML-M5 XLarge, and the image is going to be none. And now there are two more variables that are not going to change depending on whether local mode or not. That's why I have them outside. The framework version, this is for the TensorFlow that we're going to be using, is going to be 2.12. And the Python version is going to be 3.10. So these are two variables that I need to specify anytime I'm creating or I'm asking SageMaker to give me a deep learning image. In our case, we're going to be using TensorFlow. SageMaker requires to know which version of that deep learning image you want. These are the values that I'm going to be passing. So far, after I run this is going to give me that object. Yeah, Visual Studio wants me to take a survey now. Nope. So this is going to create me that, is going to give me that config object that's going to be ready for me to use. Let's keep going. Now we're going to be initializing some variables that I'm going to be using throughout the notebook. This is the final cell of the introduction. And these variables are, first of all, the S3 location, where I'm going to be storing everything going forward. You're going to see is your bucket name / Penguins. So anything inside Penguins, that's going to be the stuff that we're going to be uploading to your S3 bucket. And then I have a few variables, a SageMaker session that I'm going to be using, and we're going to explain it. Anytime we use it, we're going to talk about why I'm using that. A SageMaker client, which is the Boto 3 API to access SageMaker services. You're going to see how we use those. An IAM client, and this IAM client is anytime I want to use anything related with security, I'm going to use this IAM client to access that API, and the region, which is just the default region of my session. In this case, region is going to be US Eastern 1. In your case, it might be different. Okay, so this is all of the code for session 1. So I want to show you a couple more things before we're done with this session. The first is there is a very easy way to follow through with this notebook, to just check out the notebook as I go through the code that is not necessarily using Visual Studio, right? So you can go to this URL. Let me find it here. You're going to go to cohort.ml.school. So if you type that URL, cohort.ml.school, you are going to get a web version of this cohort, okay, of all of the code of this cohort. That is why you might see weird instructions like hide, right? This hide is just telling the tool that I'm using, which is MBDev, I'm using MBDev to produce that HTML, nice HTML notebook or web page containing all of the code in the notebook. That I don't want this cell to be displayed, okay? Because it's not interesting, so I don't want this cell to be displayed. And you're gonna see a bunch of those weird comments. Those are comments for MBDev. Either way, if you want to just take what's important about the code, you can open this website. All of the sessions are organized here, so you can click on any session. And as you can see, like here, you get the diagrams. If I click on the diagrams, you get like a big version of the diagrams. The same thing is going to happen throughout the code. You can see all of the code, and it reads like a book, like a big tutorial. And I found that it's very simple to follow. This type of web page is much easier than having to open the Visual Studio environment. Obviously, if you care about the code, if you want to run the code yourself, you might also want to have Visual Studio and do it with that. With that said, let me give you a quick tour of SageMaker Studio. We're gonna see plenty of SageMaker Studio as we make progress throughout the sessions. So let's go here. By the way, we should have now, where am I? Okay, I need to open SageMaker. That's how I usually move through the services. There is a search bar. I type the name of the service and I go there. So here's the quick domain that we created. I'm not gonna go inside that one because it's not configured. So it's gonna take a little bit more time to configure. But if I go here inside the one that I already created, actually I'm gonna go here so it's easier. Pick your domain, okay? Go to Studio. I'm gonna do it again. Just click on Studio. You select your domain. By default, you're gonna get the domain that you just created and click on Open Studio, okay? This is gonna take, I think the first time it might take a minute because it needs to create all of this. After that, it's just gonna be really quick. This is what you're gonna get. This is SageMaker Studio, and here we're gonna have all of the options. Like we're gonna get access to the endpoints, we're gonna get access to the pipelines, we're gonna get access to all of the stuff that we're doing. You're gonna get access from here. So some of the things that I want you to see really quick, there is an option here called pipelines. And here you're gonna get, let me show you. This is a pipeline. This is session 15 pipeline. We're gonna get to session 15 at some point. Session 15 pipeline, you can see all of the components of that session. Session 17, there is nothing in session 17 here. Haven't run that. Let me see session 16, nothing. Session 3, I ran this earlier today. So session 3 is just one step. So again, you can see all of the pipelines here. You can just click on this and see settings and details and all of the information that you need for this pipeline. We also have models, and this is a lot like the model registry where you can see like different models, and like this is version 2 of a model that's approved and performance of that model is loading. You can get the, evaluations and activity and tags and metadata of that model. So that's awesome. This here, I deleted this. This is not gonna work. You can get deployments where you can see endpoints. I don't have any endpoints right now, but you will see the endpoints. Anyway, this SageMaker Studio, it's sort of like the command base of where everything is going to happen here. At this point, everything is running on your computer and you are ready to start dealing with code. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next session.